Welcome back to the Mike Huckabee Show. Larry Pratt is joining me. He has been executive director for Gun Owners of America for 30 years. GOA is a membership organization of 300,000 Americans, all of whom are dedicated to promoting and protecting their Second Amendment freedom. Their website, by the way, because we're going to get into some things, but we won't get into everything that will be valuable to you to understand this issue. And they have an outstanding website. And I suggest that you refer to it, gunowners.org. Gunowners.org. Larry Pratt, it's good to have you back.
Governor, good to be with you. Thank you.
Hey, I want to promise you something. Our discussion today is going to be nothing like the one you had with Mr. Britt Pierce Morgan.
Oh, then I can go to sleep.
Oh, but don't. Good gosh. How did you
don't turn your back on that guy.
I don't know how you kept from coming across the table and grabbing him by the lapels and beating his limey rear right out of the room. I just, honestly.
Well, before you think too highly of me, let me point out that we were about 100 miles apart.
You were on satellite. Okay. Probably why he was so bold. But I thought he was so condescending. And, you know, I'd never thought that much about him one way or the other until I saw that interview. And when I did, I thought, you condescending, patronizing pig. What?
You're an unbelievably stupid man, aren't you?
I mean, it just... I
tell you what, I don't watch CNN. In fact, I don't watch that much television.
Well, no one else does either, Larry, so it's okay.
So I guess I had heard the name, but it didn't mean anything to me. I'd certainly never seen the fellow's show.
Uh-huh.
And, after being on it, I can see why I probably hadn't seen the show before.
Well, you know, one of the things, and we've been talking about it this hour, some of the reactions to firearms has just been over the top, ridiculously stupid. And a good example is the story we were talking about, this school in Detroit that made a kid take the Army men off cupcakes because the Army soldiers, little plastic soldiers on top of the cupcake, were holding rifles, which is what soldiers do. Last time I checked.
Yeah,
and
so
you know,
very threatening to see a soldier with a rifle, especially if they're carried in a normal carry position. I don't know whether the soldiers were imitating how they might be in combat, but even then, I would think a 2-inch plastic figure might not be really that big a threat.
Well, it's just bizarre. Larry, you've been at this a long time. I mean, Gun Owners of America have been in, circulation for 30 years, so you've seen it come and go, and there have been moments in our history back during the Clinton years, and I remember in the 70s there was a big push for gun control, and in the 60s I can remember a big push in the mid to late 60s for it. I've never seen anything quite as irrational as what I'm seeing today, and I want you to add some perspective. Is this different than any type of pressure we've seen before?
You know, this is a point that you're making that is certainly one that I have had to think about, because it does seem different. It seems that it's lasting longer. Columbine might have been something at all comparable, and there was a big kerfuffle for 2 or 3 weeks, and then things went back to normal news cycle. That hasn't happened with this. The media has pretty much managed to keep the gun issue alive, and the only thing I can figure is that Newtown happened after the president was reelected. They knew that the president didn't have to worry about getting reelected ever again, and so they had their cheerleader in the White House, and I think that is why they have decided they're going to try to keep it going, hoping that they can break our resistance. And what they're finding out is that there's perhaps a good dozen red state Senate Democrats who are not interested in a gun vote. Their voters would expect them to vote pro-Second Amendment, and their party would want them to vote anti-Second Amendment, and they would be much happier if there were just no vote at all. But if you push them, my guess is a bunch of them are going to vote pro-Second Amendment.
Well, I would hope so, because there's been no body of evidence that has been brought forth that show that if we pass some of these measures proposed, for example, the banning of high-capacity magazines or even the idea of, and I will not use the term assault weapons. I will always say so-called, because it's ridiculous that people don't know what they're talking about.
And these are really personal defense firearms. When we saw them in use by the Korean merchants during the L.A. riots, they were defending stores, defending their own lives. They were not out assaulting anybody.
Well, and some of the firepower that these so-called assault weapons have is far less than my Weatherby 300 mag that I go hunting with.
Oh my, and how? That's probably one of the really big misconceptions that is out there, and Joe Biden fell right into it. It's as if he went to the little girls' school of guns are icky. And he said that, why, yes, a shotgun is what you need. It's much easier to handle, and you just load that up and fire a couple of blasts, and everything will be okay. And you don't want one of those assault weapons. They're so difficult to handle. Well, at least one person, I'm told there are several, did a video which we thought was very good, and we put it on our website at gunowners.org, and it shows actual footage of young ladies who some demonic sort of young man that they must have known had them fire shotguns without telling them how you might protect yourself from being blown over. And so you see a bunch of them falling back on their keisters, or really taking like the barrel coming up and popping one in the head. Another one flew out of the girl's hands at the range. She was holding it kind of down along the hip, so it didn't have a shoulder to bounce into. And then one of them even turned and said something like, "Arnold," and like, "Hey, you didn't warn me about this guy." And so finally, the last few frames of this video shows a woman in all very nice headgear and goggles and everything, and she is just blasting away, boom, 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 with her quote-unquote assault weapon. It probably was an AR-15 with a big magazine, and obviously not having a bit of trouble. And it just, when you think of Biden pontificating on the real truth about guns, realizing that this guy probably, the only time he's seen a gun is if a Secret Service agent drops one.
Well, I've seen that video, and it is absolutely priceless. It's it's a double over laughing kind of thing.
It really is good.
Anybody that's ever shot both shotguns and the kind of rifles that these guys want to ban would know that and these are smaller caliber rifles, again, compared to the big hunting rifles that I was mentioning before, like the Weatherby 300s. They don't have near the recoil. And my gosh, I know many a time I've come in from the duck woods after a day of duck hunting with a 12-gauge Benelli, and my shoulder is just absolutely sore and black and blue from the recoil of taking shells and sky busting and going after mallards.
Obviously, the vice president knew nothing about what he was talking, but that's probably fairly typical for a liberal Democrat, because they have opinions about just about everything, and they tell us what we should be doing when they're obviously clueless.
Buy a shotgun.
That's his big thing. Buy a shotgun. I mean, I thought maybe he was getting a commission from Winchester and Browning and Benelli and some of the other manufacturers. Tell me what Gun Owners of America are doing now to try to educate the American public on why these bans are a bad idea.
Well, we know that the ban that had been enacted by the same senator that once won now back in the 90s didn't do anything to lower crime, so it's not likely to do anything better this time around. And for the main reason is that the people that own these kinds of firearms are people like us, and we're not the criminal element. The criminals don't even use the kind of guns that they're talking about banning. The so-called assault weapon, these defense rifles, are used in less than 4% of the homicides in this country. And so all of this talk about something that's really about de minimis, what really is used most of the time in serious crime, including murder, are handguns. And I don't think politically they feel that they're ready to take that on. If you couldn't years ago pass a handgun ban in California or in Massachusetts, probably is not going to fly for the whole country either. And so they're picking on the semi-automatic rifle with a big magazine, typically black, and they're hoping that the cosmetics of it will work to their favor. But I think the longer this debate goes on, the more we're realizing that when you say Joe Biden is for it, that's worth a laugh.
That's a good point. The background check, that seems to be one area that politicians really push. What kind of background check is acceptable, and what's wrong with the idea of the so-called universal background check?
Well, what they're trying to do is make it so that even a father giving a gun to a son would have to go through a dealer, be logged in, have the background check done, have a paper trail on it. What they are looking for is a universal gun registry. Our objection to the background check all along was twofold. It won't do any good. It doesn't lower crime. And it does provide the data for a national gun registry, which is wildly unconstitutional. And so this thing is simply the last step in what began with the initial instant background check. Again, it's not a crime-fighting tool. The only possible utility for it is to have a database of names that says that Larry Pratt bought a shotgun on a particular day and his address is such and such. And then you get, if you can get all of the private sales transferred from the private sector into the recorded sector of some dealer somewhere, then they've got it. They've got the National Gun Registry, and we've seen what U.S. governments have done when there was a registry. In New York City back in the 70s, they confiscated guns that had been registered. And after Katrina down in New Orleans, authorities went to gun stores, got the names and addresses of gun buyers, and then paid them a visit and confiscated their guns. There weren't any police around to protect anybody, but they had plenty of people that were going around collecting people's guns. Incredible. We don't want them getting our names and addresses.
It makes perfect sense, and it doesn't make perfect sense to take the one line of defense away from law-abiding people who might not be able to get a cop there for 30 minutes, and I love the phrase that when seconds count, the police are just minutes away.
And the police will tell you that themselves.
Yeah.
This is not something that is a dig at the police. This is a fact of life. This is a reflection that we don't have nearly the resources to have an officer at our beck and call. It's just not the way it's going to work, never has.
Well, Larry, I appreciate your being here, and I hope this was a little more pleasant than your visit to Piers Morgan.
Always a pleasure to talk with you. I enjoyed Piers Morgan, but in a very different way. I enjoyed watching somebody making a fool out of himself, which I think he did very nicely.
He did, in fact. Larry Pratt, Gun Owners of America, their website, which I recommend that you check out. You get some. If you're going to talk to someone and have a conversation and you want to be armed with facts, not just feelings and passions, gunowners.org is a place where you can get some great information and facts to share. Larry Pratt, great to talk to you again.
Governor, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.